Hello,
I
welcome
love
to the
that
Peanuts
intro.
Gallery. I love that intro too. It makes me dance every time.
Oh yeah, every single time it comes on, y'all can't see us, but we're all like doing a little dance behind the little peanut signs. So it just makes everyone happy. I love that sound.
Right? I've heard that from other guests as well. All
Mhm.
right, so welcome everybody. Welcome Carrie, and
Hello.
welcome to our guest, Johnny Beyond.
Woohoo!
Ta-da!
There he is.
So, for those that don't know Johnny, he is a magician, he's an entertainer, he is a podcaster, he is a ghost storyteller, and most importantly to me personally, he is the producer of the Peanuts Gallery. Woo!
Yay! Johnny, you
Welcome,
wear so many
Johnny.
hats.
I
Well,
know,
no,
right?
so what it really is I am a storyteller. And
Love that.
it just depends on the venue and the story being told, what medium I use to tell the story.
Oh, love that. That's
Yeah.
So
just one big hat.
yeah. So it
Mhm.
could be music, it could be magic, it could be, a paranormal story, it could be, used to be through dance, but I'm at level 53 now and can't quite move like I did when I was in my 20s. I'm just saying.
Right? I used to love to swing dance, and I just can't imagine doing that now.
Well, so I was dancing like at that level up until maybe 2018, and I
Mm.
had a foot injury. And
Yeah.
that kind of put things on the kibosh. And then 2020, I got COVID, and that left me with incredible vertigo. And
Oh,
so
Oh.
even if I try to move like I did when I was 20, the room starts spinning like a roulette wheel.
oh
Place your
my
bets,
gosh.
place your bets.
Was it
Wow.
was it swing dancing that you did primarily?
So I have a degree in music theater performance with a minor in choreography and specifically American folk dance.
Cool.
Um,
I had no idea.
yeah, and I studied ballet, I studied jazz, I sang and danced on cruise ships and in theme parks for years and years and years. Did did an off Broadway show, did a Broadway tour of Broadway swing, and I did do a lot of swing dancing for from 2000 to 2018. I had a show called Swingin' at the Roxy that I created. I wrote, created all the characters, and we toured the country for that length of time, all over the country. So I did a lot of swing dancing, and in when I did Broadway's original swing, um, I learned collegiate shag, which is a very aerobic style of swing dancing. It's really hard, and very few people specialize in it. And my partner and I became recognized for it. And we would, travel around and teach workshops and do, performance exhibitions. First day with my new tongue. And yeah,
It's
but
called collegiate shag.
collegiate shag.
I'm gonna have to look that up. That sounds
Step,
interesting.
yeah, it's step, pop, step, pop, step, step.
It sounds like something else, but I'm guessing
Yeah.
that's it's a little bit more PG than that.
Yes. Yeah. So it started in South Carolina. It was made popular by the beach hipsters on the Carolina coast.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the stuff that they used to do in the late 50s and early 60s in the beach movies.
Mm.
Some. Yeah. I mean, that was a lot of go-go.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
This is more really frenetic footwork.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, when I
Interesting.
started doing it, I mean, I've been dancing all my life, but when I started doing collegiate shag, after 2 minutes, I thought I was going to have a heart attack because it was so cardio heavy. It was so aerobic. It's a whole different ball game.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, Johnny, because there are when it comes to the world of dance, um, and music theater in general, it's hard to get guys into it. And I have a little boy. In fact, the little boy that was just in here, that he is a dancer, and he's the only male dancer
Yeah.
in his entire program. So what little tidbits can you give to little boys who are in an all girl dance program that are like, why am I the only one?
You go, boy.
Well, that's what I tell them all the time.
So this is not politically correct at all.
Okay.
But I much like that, I was the only guy in my collegiate program. And you know what? I had a lot of girlfriends.
Oh, all right. All right, Johnny.
I'll just put it that way.
I was at my daughter's school one time, and they had a male cheerleader, and there was these two boys there, and they were, he's a cheerleader.
Can't even.
And I went, hey guys. And they were like, yeah. And I said, so he gets to hang out with 20 of the prettiest girls in the whole school, and you guys are making fun of him?
Uh-huh.
I think he's pretty smart.
That's right.
And they both went, oh,
And
yeah.
listen, as a male cheerleader, as a male dancer, you're not just hanging out with them. There's physical contact. Let's just put it that way.
Well,
whoo, some collegiate shack.
Yeah. A little bit spicy, a little bit politically
they were
incorrect.
probably fourth graders. I wasn't going to go there.
Okay.
Okay. But so
never mind.
Well, what did it for me? For in music and acting and performance, what did it for me that really was that the audience cheering, clapping, applauding, and then it kind of all came together when I was a senior in high school. I won an award for the Ohio Theater Guild Award for Best Supporting Actor in a Musical. I was Mr. Bumble in Oliver.
Nice.
And all of a sudden, the girls that never gave me the time of day were suddenly interested in this hot commodity. And I was like, aha.
Uh-huh.
I saw my future cut out for me like a well-tailored suit.
Excellent. So take note, boys. Dance and musical theater are happening for the dudes.
Yes, it is.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
And look, and I don't, this is no judgment or condemnation on anyone, but I was the only straight guy in most every production I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That helped my odds a lot.
A lot.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. So you're not dancing anymore. How are you scratching that itch then that is probably still there, right?
Yeah, it is. My daughter. My daughter is a singer and dancer as well. She's in her junior year at Austin P University, pursuing the same degree that I have, musical theater performance, and she's 100 times the dancer I was, because I didn't get into it. I didn't get into the dance part of musical theater until I was maybe a junior in high school, and then I started seriously training in college. And a year to 2 years later, I'm dancing professionally, on cruise ships in New York and theme parks and whatnot. Yeah.
It's awesome.
That is awesome. All right. So we've gone completely off track, and I still haven't asked you.
Wait, there was a track?
Question.
There was a track?
There is a track. There is a track. It's right over here beside me on my screen. Okay, so which character do you relate to and why?
See, Patricia has learned something. You never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. She and I have had this. She and I have had this discussion privately several times now. For me, it's Charlie Brown. I really relate to Charlie Brown in a lot of ways. Mainly because every time we see him, and I want to frame it in the terms of the football, Lucy in the football, he's always this close. And that's how I feel like I've been my entire career, my entire life, this close. I've had huge successes. I'm a world champion magician, but that didn't turn into the revenue that I thought it would. I didn't automatically start getting booked to do a lot of gigs, and I came this close. And I don't feel like maybe the football has been pulled out from under me, but I just don't feel like still at level 53 Gen X, I don't feel like I've properly kicked that ball through the field goal. And when I was growing up, I was the overweight fat kid. So I was often made fun of, picked on, mostly because of my weight. I was excluded from a lot of things. And there's this stereotype, and I don't know if if it really holds through today, but when I was a kid, the fat kids were looked at as being stupid and less intelligent. And Charlie Brown is treated that way by his peers a lot. Like he's just not the sharpest tool in the shed. But and what's really funny is Charlie Brown is aware of that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it ever lets him, gets to him. He just kind of accepts it as it is. He's like, well, this is where we're at, and he keeps going. And that's I've felt that way my entire life.
He has a lot of resilience and determination, even in the face of constant disappointments.
Yeah.
Did you feel that way when you were a kid, like reading Charlie Brown? Did you ever pick up on that determination?
I don't think I really did. I don't think I really thought about it in those terms until you and I started talking about this podcast.
Gotcha.
And it was kind of a light bulb moment.
Yeah. I mean, well, and I have to say, I didn't know half of the things that I've learned in this process about Sparky, about why he wrote what he wrote, how close he felt to these characters. And while he said that there was a part of him in every single character in the shows or in the strip, the one that he related to the most was Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
And yet he had amazing success with Charlie Brown. And yet he still always felt like, the round-headed kid that never got any respect.
Oh, you're such a blockhead.
I think it's interesting, though, because Charlie Brown, as much as we think of him as kind of like, oh, he's the kid that kind of always makes it but never quite does, or he's the kid that's kind of doing things wrong or never achieving, but he is the kid who's asking the questions. He is the one that's more than any other character, maybe besides Linus, that's looking internally and is more self-aware than any of these other characters are. And that, to me, that is a whole strength in and of itself, to be aware of one's internal world and to analyze it and understand it. That's a superpower, And so I get, did you, even though Johnny, you feel like, you never quite made it or, you were picked on or whatever, did you feel that sense of inner awareness that you were asking questions in your internal world that other kids weren't asking?
I don't know that I was asking questions, but I'm a voracious reader, or I'm a researcher at heart. That's how I read, from a research perspective, because I want to know something. So I start reading it. So from that aspect, maybe, I will say that I am one of those people, a lot like Charlie Brown. He never let his outside circumstances prevent him from doing what he wanted to do. And I, I'm one of those people that I will tell you what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, and then I do it that way, regardless of whether someone comes on board, joins me, cheers me, or not. And I feel like Charlie Brown is a lot that way. He knows what he wants to do and he does it.
Yep.
Regardless of what outside factors are acting upon him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he is determined to kick that football one day.
Yeah.
I know.
Now,
50
Carrie,
years.
I have a theory about Charlie Brown.
Hit me.
And
Yeah.
Lucy. So in the strips and in the animated films, we see Lucy always has this thing for Schroeder. But and she torments Charlie Brown.
Right.
But knowing what I know now as an adult, I feel like as they grow into adulthood, that Charlie Brown and Lucy end up together. I think that Lucy secretly loves Charlie Brown.
Interesting. You know what? If that really is the narrative, this is what I hope happens. That he has some therapy starting in his teens, into his 20s. He starts learning some really good personal boundaries.
He would have to with Lucy.
He would have to. And then one day he pulls out the personal boundary and says, "You will not treat me this way." I feel like she would instantly fall in love with that.
Yeah.
If that were the scenario, I can't say that he would fall in love with her, but I think that people that generally bully other people, once they are kind of matched, then that's when they start respecting that other person, and that's when they start admiring that other person. So I could see that happening. It's interesting you say that, because we've always said that if Charlie Brown's going to marry anyone, it's going to be Peppermint Patty when they get older.
Right.
And so that's interesting that your version of the events is that Lucy and Charlie Brown get together. Now, why her?
Because I know from experience that sometimes the bully, in this case Lucy, picks on him and torments him, pulls the pigtails, so to speak, because she really likes him.
Right.
And Charlie Brown keeps coming back for it.
Right.
He keeps coming back for it. There's a reason. And yes, Peppermint Patty, I think, is deeply enamored of Charlie. I think she is in love with him. But I never felt that reciprocation from him.
No, but so my theory is that she would just walk up one day and be like, "Hey, Chuck, we're going to get married. Meet me at the courthouse." And he'd be like, "Okay." And they'd get married. And then she'd be like, "Okay, I want a football team. So let's get to work." And she'd have a football team.
That's maybe if he doesn't go to therapy and develop boundaries.
Well, yes.
That's that scenario.
But I just think he's such a blockhead that he wouldn't even think to go to therapy, and he'd just be a salesman, and he'd like never marry anybody, and she would just be like, "Yeah, let's do it." And he'd go, "Okay."
Interesting.
I see both sides of the coin.
Yes.
I do too now.
But like I yearn for Charlie Brown to develop some boundaries. I yearn for the day when he says, "You know what? All y'all, no." And everyone's hair blows back, from the healthy boundaries that are emanating from him. But then again, Would the strip be better if he were more emotionally healthy? I don't think as many of us would relate.
No, we wouldn't.
Well,
And that's the whole point of the hero's journey. So I
Right.
talk about the hero's journey a lot in
Mhm.
storytelling. And a good story puts the audience, the listener, the reader into a relatable role. So it's not just reading the hero's journey, it's experiencing the hero's journey as a proxy through that character. And Charlie Brown is that for us.
Mhm.
There is so much to relate to, you know, in different walks of life. Different people are going to relate to Charlie Brown for different reasons, and we see ourselves in him, and
Mhm.
he is the underdog that we're cheering for as he goes through that hero's journey. It's just that where we meet him and where he's been so far is in the middle of that journey. We don't know what
Mhm.
the end is. We don't know what his status quo will be, but that we're putting ourselves in that position. And
Yeah.
one of the brilliant things about Charles Schultz's story is that he surrounded Charlie Brown with people that we know.
Yeah.
You know,
yes.
every single one of those people we know in our real life,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
and that makes it even more relatable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is why I always ask the question of people when I would be at a Comic Con, what character do you relate to the most?
Mhm.
And I'd get all kinds of wonderful, crazy answers from people. And which led me to do the podcast because
Yeah.
it is so interesting how often you meet or know a Lucy or a Charlie Brown or a Linus. And I love how relatable they are.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's so interesting that you bring up the hero's journey. Can you give us a little bit of context for the listeners that are not aware of? Is it Joseph Campbell?
Yeah, Joseph
Okay.
Campbell's book, Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he basically distills every great story down to what he calls the hero's journey. There's a beginning, middle, and end, but in the hero's journey, we meet a a protagonist who is given a quest, a task, a problem to solve. And he has to leave his comfort zone. And in many cases, like the case of the story of Ulysses, which is kind of the template. Ulysses, for him to leave his comfort zone, he had to physically leave and go on a quest to find his prize, to find his destiny, to find his future. And along the way, as part of that hero's journey, they meet a mentor, the strange creature. In Star Wars, it's first Ben Kenobi, but later Yoda. Okay, so there's a mentor figure, and then there is the the climax of the story, the resolution of the problem, the succession of the quest, and then a new status quo.
Mm.
And that is the hero's journey. And that new status quo could set up a new hero's journey. So it could be a continuous process, but that's what I mean when I talk about the hero's journey. And every
Mhm.
great story has that, whether it's a 3-minute short story told orally, or a 9-film franchise.
Yeah, I'm working on my novel and kind of the structure of it, and I have on my 3x5 cards, all the different parts of the hero's journey, and who the mentor is, and what the central problem is, and all of those parts. And you can sit down with any good story, and you can map out it. It applies to all stories. You have to have a problem. You have to have these certain things, because that's what we know as that's what we want to have when we tell a story or when we hear a story.
And
um
and
s- yeah, go ahead.
the best stories, that protagonist is someone that we can see in ourselves, or we can see ourselves as.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, Charlie Brown, Luke Skywalker, you know, you think Marty McFly, you know, these are characters that we can put ourselves into and see ourselves, you know, taking that journey.
So, Johnny, you talked about how Charlie Brown is a relatable protagonist hero in kind of this larger conversation about the hero's journey. Then you also mentioned that there has to be a quest or a problem or some kind of a goal. What is Charlie Brown's goal?
The little red-haired girl.
What does she represent?
To him, it represents, he thinks it represents happiness, bliss, joy, and it may or may not. You know, she may not actually be the ultimate prize, you know, but that because like in the case of Ulysses, you know, his ultimate prize was to become the hero that he was always born to be. It wasn't about physical things. It was an internal metamorphosis. And for Charlie Brown, the little redhead girl may be that. You know,
Absolutely.
Because here's the thing: I've lived life long enough to know that he probably is not going to get the little redhead girl.
Right.
Nope.
But that's okay. That's not his ultimate prize.
Right. Yeah.
His ultimate prize is that therapy, that self-awareness, and setting those boundaries, and then setting a new status quo.
But how many times do we see that in stories? Like, for instance, The Wizard of Oz, where you have Dorothy and all she wanted to do was find the wizard, kind of like Charlie Brown with the little redheaded girl. And you find out at the end that the thing you were really longing for, like the wizard or the little redheaded girl, isn't what you were really wanting. Really, in the end, all she wanted was home.
Yeah.
And the thing she was running from.
And she had it with her the entire time.
Yeah.
So Charlie Brown has to understand. Charlie Brown, listen to this podcast. You have to understand you already have everything inside of you. You just have to believe in it. How do we get him this message?
Do you feel better now?
I do. I need this is a perfect moment for my little tin cup with my nickels and saying 5 cents, please. Nickels.
Carrie just had a cathartic moment, I think.
Did.
Right?
I did.
Wow.
I love talking about storytelling. So when you do a mashup of two things that I love, storytelling and peanuts, oh man, you got me right in the heart bone.
And you know, when we're talking about the Peanuts, the other Peanuts character that takes a lot of central focus is Snoopy. And Snoopy is the kind of he's the perfect complement to Charlie Brown because he's kind of the antithesis. Everything comes easy to Snoopy.
Yes.
He has no fear, no hesitation, and everything he touches seems to turn to gold.
Yeah.
And we know those people in our lives too. And either we hate them or we wish we were them.
Right.
Or a little of both.
Yeah.
That's true. Who is the mentor character if we're applying Hero's Journey? Who's the mentor character in the Peanuts?
I would think Linus.
That's what I would think too.
Linus.
Yeah.
Linus is always the one who has the sage wisdom beyond his years.
Yeah.
You know, like in the Charlie Brown Christmas special, when Charlie Brown is so frustrated with this commercialism and this focus on the glitz and the glamour, he yells out, "What is the point of this? What is this all about?" And Linus takes his blanket and forms a shepherd's, and and he just says, "Lo in the field there were flocks by night," and he quotes that whole gospel from Luke about the birth of Christ. And it's one of the most profound moments ever on television.
Yeah.
And it all comes from this little genius boy who, it's so unexpected, kind of like Yoda. Yoda, we did not expect Yoda to be the great master Jedi when we meet him.
Right.
He was a strange little creature.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Linus is like our Yoda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In Peanuts. Wow.
And Sparky had to fight so hard to get that in the movie.
Yeah.
They did not want that in there at all. And he was like, you do it my way or we don't do it.
That's the most profound, like that is the whole high point of the whole program is that moment.
Yeah.
So we had to have it.
Yeah. Can you imagine it without it?
No.
And even people who aren't religious will tell me that's my favorite part of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Well, and let's just that one special. It is a perfect representation of Charlie Brown and the people around him, because Charlie Brown is that scrawny little forgotten tree. And once people around it, once Linus shares the value of the whole holiday, what do they all do? They gather around it and they help transform it into this gorgeous celebration of the season. And in a lot of ways, they're doing that to Charlie Brown. And that is eventually what will happen in his lifetime. Mm-hmm. Those people are going to come around when he's the most broken. Mm-hmm. They are going to come around him, lift him up, and celebrate him.
Absolutely.
We just haven't seen it yet, but that's the prophetic story. That's his new status quo.
Absolutely.
Could you imagine how wonderful the world would be if we did that with each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just surrounded each other and built each other up and let people come out this whole different being.
And if I remember correctly, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but the first one to go to that tree and start working on it was Lucy. She was the first one to break lines, I think.
I don't remember. We'll have to go back.
I remember Linus taking his blanket off and wrapping it around the tree, but I don't remember who approaches the tree first.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is interesting. It's so, I love this idea of the hero transforming, because how anticlimactic. Like this is why you can't have a story just about Snoopy. Somebody that's good at everything all the time, that always is kind of the hero of the story. And there's nothing in there, but you have a character like Charlie Brown, who we see his struggle all through his life. Mm-hmm. And then to finally, hopefully, fingers crossed, at the end of his life, go through all of the, not the end of his life, but as he gets into adulthood, he finally starts to come into his own. That is such the hero has to have that journey, or else it's just boring, Yeah. So for all those people who are like, man, and this goes for you too, Johnny, call this prophecy or whatever you want to call it. But I believe it's not always going to be like that for you and for the Charlie Browns of the world, where you're almost there. I believe and hold out hope that this is just part of your journey. And at some point, something is good. You're going to have a breakthrough.
Yeah.
So there, universe. I'm putting it out there. I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, you have released a book recently.
A series of books.
A series of books.
Ooh, let's talk about them.
Yeah, I've published 6 books. Yeah, let me see if I can reach around and grab the latest copy. I got to stand up for this.
Okay.
Hold on.
Do it. We'll be here.
All right. So, I published back in 2005, and this is how I got into podcasting. I published a book called Theatrical Magic, and it was a book to teach other magicians how to use the hero's journey to create stories that transform, that transform tricks into theater. And I started podcasting because I got so many questions from people who read it. They were like, well, okay, well, what about this? And what about this? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast and go chapter by chapter and answer these questions. So that was my first published book in 2005. And then in 2011, I think, I was doing the Swingin' at the Roxy show, and I was performing it around the country, and we did an abbreviated version of it for a comic book convention in Arkansas. And this publisher saw it, and he was like, hey, have you ever thought about writing a book about this story and these characters? And I was like, I've thought about it. And he said, well, I'm going to publish it. And 9 months later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right? That's
9
amazing.
months later, I had the first volume published. And the original book is now out of print, and I've moved to another publisher, but all of the stories are available again, starting with Night Reich, One Night at the Roxy, and the latest one is Rise of the Impossibilists. Hey, did you know you could do this, Patricia?
What?
Rise of the Impossibilists.
Nice.
It's Tales of the Decoverse, Volume 3. And this character in the center is the character that I created for myself in that musical Swingin' at the Roxy. And it has all... Here, I'll just read the description. Big Daddy Cool Johnny Della Rocca faces an impossible choice. Fight his friends and mentors, or allow Rasputin to assassinate world leaders at the 5-Power Treaty Conference and alter history in an irreparable way.
Whoa. That's cool.
Yeah.
Some big stakes there.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a time travel roller coaster of adventure.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, I've done some nonfiction. I've done science fiction, and I've written 2 books on sales and marketing that are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever you buy books.
See,
Can you buy that book at Barnes & Noble? Or
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this is published by Seventh Star Press. They're a publishing company out of Kentucky, out of Louisville. And they specialize in speculative fiction, science fiction. So
Now, Johnny, I have to push back here. Here's what I'm going to push back on. You said that you are not. It's never quite there. Look at how many. You had somebody come up to you and say, Johnny, I'm going to publish your book. Do you know how hard I'm trying to get published?
I know people hate me when I tell that story.
I'm thrilled for you, but I say to you, man, have you not made it? 6 books published?
Well, yeah, but they're not bestsellers. They're out there, but I mean, it's a fulfillment of my creative endeavors.
Right.
But I'm not. It's not my living. It's not something that I can retire on yet. That's kind of my little redheaded girl is that creative endeavor that doesn't just fulfill me creatively, but financially as well.
I see. Okay.
Okay, but when you were doing the dancing stuff, wasn't that paying your everyday bills?
Well, yeah, but
Okay.
I wasn't
5 cents, please.
well, and it's look, and it still does. It still
Uh-huh.
does. Maybe I'm just greedy. Maybe I don't see the forest for the trees, or maybe I can't recognize, or maybe I'm just unfulfilled,
Ah.
or I
Well,
can't get enough.
Or maybe it was always there and you always had it. You just had to look inside and discover that you already have what you always wanted. I don't know.
no, but I think there's a lot to be said for having that realization of a life well lived.
Yeah.
Well,
And
let's
even if you don't have the financial stuff that you have, that we as a society have decided is what's important, you have in so many ways inspired people,
Mhm.
made people laugh, brought joy to them, whether it's from your books or your hosting at a Comic-Con or your magic or helping me with this podcast. I mean, and so I'd like you to reframe how
okay.
you've lived your
Yeah,
life.
push back, Johnny. Push back whenever you
So
want.
here's how I feel. Okay. This is just me being like flat out honest.
Yeah.
Every day, people come to me with problems.
Mhm.
Every day they need something from me.
Mhm.
And I feel like, people are taking. And I'm like that little Christmas tree. I'm like, when is someone going to pour into me instead of
Mm.
take from me?
Yeah.
That's what it all boils down to. And there's nothing that I've accomplished that has made me feel like other people are, you know, decorating the tree and celebrating the tree.
Mhm.
Does that make
Yeah.
any sense at all?
Yeah,
It does,
it does.
actually. It does.
I
It
mean,
does.
my email inbox on a Sunday was 100 emails deep with people needing something from me.
Hmm.
Okay.
Do you, and this perhaps is beyond the scope of this podcast, but what the heck?
We've gone this far.
Yeah, we've come this far, might as well go the whole way. But maybe just like Charlie Brown grows up and finds that he has to go to therapy and learn boundaries. What? Shoot.
Listen.
Johnny, please stay with me here. White
No,
knuckling.
no is a
Wow.
complete sentence.
But truly, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe those people, if you made yourself less available and you said, absolutely not, I'm not working on a Sunday, you are still checking your email and possibly getting back to people on a Sunday. So you are training them that is
well,
okay.
Okay, so that is a whole nother thing that in my corporate day job,
Uh-huh.
I am known as the time management guru, the
Mm.
person who knows how to set boundaries with clients and whatnot. So even though I'm getting those emails, I'm not going to respond to them until tomorrow.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And there's a very specific time that I respond to them. And so that's a whole thing. But yes,
Right.
for anyone who deals with that problem, that's how you deal with it, is you set those boundaries.
If you get one thing out of this podcast, it's please set boundaries.
Yeah, if you don't control your calendar will control you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Johnny, you're such a good sport. Thank you for suffering our question.
It's all
I
good.
know. Will anybody ever come on the show again after
Ooh, maybe
or
not.
Johnny?
Johnny, please come back.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about your own, the Cereal Box podcast?
Ooh, yeah.
So, Back of the Cereal Box is a pop culture
Yes.
podcast that celebrates the fun of the Saturday mornings of our youth while navigating adulthood today. Every Saturday morning, we do what we're doing right here in a virtual rec room, but we live stream it. So the audience is watching us live. They're interacting, they're posting comments, asking questions. And we literally, because when I was a kid, we didn't have smartphones or tablets at the breakfast table. We were
Nope.
sitting down with big bowls of cereal, and in between cartoons and comic books and kaiju movies, we were reading the back of the cereal box. That was our newspaper. That was our world. And that's what our show is all about. So we literally, in our pajamas, eat big bowls of cereal, and we talk about cartoons and comic books from our youth, and we celebrate those memories and try to use that as a way for our audience to escape some of the negativity and toxicity of their adult lives, even if just for an hour on Saturday morning.
Absolutely. That's cool. You know, I
Fun.
that's how I learned about recycling. I had no idea about recycling until the back of a cereal box was like, by the way, if you see this like triangular symbol, you know that it's recyclable. And I was like, what? And I went into the kitchen and I looked at all the things that had that symbol on it. And I was like, all from a back of a Life cereal box. And here I am recycling now.
Well, so we just talked about prioritizing your schedule and setting boundaries. I actually learned that from Saturday morning cartoons, because when I was a kid, you had to make choices because we didn't. And kids today don't understand this. They look at me with like I have a third eye when I tell them this, because we didn't have streaming services or on-demand video. We didn't even, when I was a kid, we didn't even have VHS tapes yet.
Yeah.
And so on Saturday morning, you had to prioritize your time, because often your favorite shows would be on competing stations at the same time.
Right.
And you had to make a choice.
Yep.
You had to choose one or the other, or you had to prioritize your schedule because if you missed it, you missed it.
Right.
You might not ever see it again.
There's no
Exactly.
TiVo. There's no recording stuff.
Nope.
It's gone.
Yep.
Wow.
And I don't even remember until I was probably in my early teens ever seeing a rerun of anything.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. And, it taught you prioritization. It taught you, time management skills. Yeah.
Wow. That sounds like I'm going to listen to that podcast. That sounds fascinating. Like something so simple as Saturday morning cartoons and the back of cereal boxes can make such a difference in our lives, and maybe even in some of our lives change the trajectory of the course of our lives.
Well, and what's really funny is when I meet people like at an event or like, through other podcasts, the minute I say back of the cereal box, there's a flood of memories that come back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone my generation or older, or the early millennials, they understand that reference immediately.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's what it's all about.
I love that. That's awesome.
All the stuff behind me is what our show is all about.
Awesome. That's so cool. Oh, I see you have an oversized what is it? Rubik's Cube back there. Love that.
Yeah, it's actually a box full of Rubik's Cube themed magic tricks.
Love that. Oh,
Ooh.
that's cool. The Rubik's Cube's really big in our house, as my husband can do one in under 2 minutes. And he's trying to teach our kids, and he's trying to teach me. I'm very resistant.
Oh, I wish I had any of my cubes in here, because I can solve it in a blink of an eye.
No
Literally.
way.
Yeah.
So are you doing like, is it like as few moves as possible you're able to do it in, or is it like you do the algorithms? Oh,
No, I
you're
do
not telling
magic.
us.
I
You're
do
not
magic.
telling us how it works.
Oh.
Oh,
I wish I had one of them with me. I would show you right now, but
shoot.
they're all out in my in the workshop. So
Dang.
I could never do those. I can do one side, but beyond that, I don't think I'm that smart.
it is literally, Patricia, just an algorithmic pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And once you know the pattern, you can solve any Rubik's Cube.
Yep.
And it
Oh.
depends on how mixed up it is, how long it takes that algorithm to, fully solve it. But if you use the exact same pattern over and over and over and over again, eventually it will solve the cube.
Yeah.
Oh.
Crazy. It's crazy. And then people get so fast. They're like, and they're doing like multiple moves, it looks like, at one time. And you
Yeah.
get these speed cubes that are like turning it's like butter, or magnetic cubes where they just like the cubes just like snap into place, the different rotations. And I have to say, if
It's
there's
astounding
one
to watch.
skill, if there's one skill a dude can learn that would impress me, take note, fellas. Get yourself in a dance and learn the Rubik's Cube.
Woo! So have you seen the kid who does it blindfolded?
Yes.
So they put a cube in front of him. He looks at it. They give him 30 seconds to look at all the sides. Sets it down. They blindfold him, and then they start the clock. 3 seconds. Blindfolded. Boom. Boom.
Incredible.
It's
What?
unreal. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Oh, okay, now I'm gonna have to go find that.
Mm-hmm. It's so cool.
Wow.
Well, Johnny, thank you so much for being here. We so appreciate you suffering our questions, and
My pleasure.
I hope it wasn't too uncomfortable.
Not at all.
Okay, good.
You got a little bossy today. Are you sure you're not a Lucy?
I'm channeling my Lucy. Ooh, 5 cents, please.
I love it.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Johnny. It really was a great episode. It was so great to hear your thoughts. And I want to celebrate you because I think you're a fantastic person. I felt that way the first afternoon that I met you up in Bowling Green. And then I knew it when we were up in Rathacon. And thank you for helping me put all this together and being such a great friend and an awesome person.
Thanks
Well,
for
you are
all
so
your
welcome.
support.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks. We'll see you all next time.